TV3. This is still News at 10 on TV3, and we're going straight to some other stories that we're monitoring for you. Now, Ghana is described as a beacon of hope for Africa because of its democratic gains over the last few years. Now, the country has enjoyed relative peace since returning to multi-party democracy in 1992, organizing 7 successful elections that have seen the peaceful transfer of power between political parties. But many keep harboring fear anytime we enter into an election year. Why is it so? Should Ghanaians be worried as some pockets of violence have already been recorded at some registration centers? These are some of the concerns some of you have raised. I would want to put that to a security analyst who's joined us by Skype. We want to pick Adib Saani's thoughts quickly. Mr. Saani, good evening. Thank you for joining us.
Good evening, Martin, and congrats.
Thank you very much. Would you say that these pockets of violence should be justifiable reason enough why the ordinary Ghanaian going about his daily activity be worried? Should we be worried or living in fear, you think?
Well, thank you very much. We have every reason to be worried. And I'm going to speak from an empirical perspective, based on certain historical antecedents. There's something called early warning signals. There's a continental early warning signal developed by the African Union. There's a subcontinental one developed by ECOWAS. We've had a number of civil society and even institutions like WANEP and Kofi Annan International Peacekeeping Center developing theirs. And it simply is a process that alerts decision makers or stakeholders to certain happenings that has the potential of causing widespread confusion or eventually even conflict in a certain situation at a particular point in time, especially towards an election. From the pockets of violence that we are witnessing during just a registration exercise should be a rude awakening, because like I have said on a number of media platforms, it's a dress rehearsal to the December 2020 elections. Hence, it is imperative that we put certain protocols and mechanisms in place if really we are committed to safeguarding our democracy during the election, so we are able to prevent further violence from happening when we finally go to the polls. And it raises some legitimate concerns. I have personally looked at it critically. I've conducted a number of research, and I've come to the realization that one of the biggest issues that we're facing so far as our democracy is concerned is our inability to differentiate between deterrence and confidence building. And it is all also encapsulated under the issue with the culture of impunity. So until we are willing and committed to nipping in the bud the culture of impunity, we would have some of these violence happening all across board, and it cuts across the political divide as well. We have serious issues currently in the country, and it's got to do with small arms and light weapons. The Small Arms Commission in 2016, after a baseline survey, came out with a report that points to well over 2 million weapons in the hands, illegal, in the hands of private people in the country. So it's usually also a recipe for disaster, because weapons feed into that cycle of violence. And when you take a closer look at our body politic, the way it is becoming toxic by the day, the way media houses are giving their platforms to politicians who spread fear and panic and hate and prejudice, is something that we really have to look out.
But Adib, let me just come in briefly. We as a country have committed to peace, and you would recall that the National Peace Council asked the 2 main political parties to sign a peace pact, which they have. Also, Parliament has passed the vigilante and related offences. And all of these are steps to show that there is that level of commitment on the part of not just government and the citizenry to make sure that going into the elections, we nip these little pockets of violence in the bud. You think this is not enough?
I think it's just 10% of the effort that should be put in. Remember, before the 2016 election, we had a similar meeting at the behest of the Ghana Police Service with other stakeholders, including CSOs. They brought the various political parties together. They appended their signature to a Magna Carta sort of document reaffirming their commitment to dealing with the issues of vigilante groups within their fold. Yet, after the election, we all witnessed what happened in the country. So, as much as I am concerned with the legal, aspect of dealing with the issues of violence in the country, what we should be very concerned about should go beyond just party leadership meeting at Pejuasi Lodge and other places and sipping tea and appending their signature. No, we need better commitment. Martin, it would interest you to know that despite the signing of the agreement, no political party can boast of disbanding their vigilante group. I was listening to one of the representatives of the political parties on radio the other day, and he opined that they don't have vigilante groups within their fold. The presenter asked again, and he repeated, yes, you heard me, we don't have vigilante groups. So that's denial in essence. It's just an indication of the lack of commitment. So we need commitment. We need to capacitate the police service. So
and that brings me to the next question, talking about the security and what they can do. Is it that they are overwhelmed by the situation, or they are capable of managing whatever situation that may arise and make sure that December polls we don't record any violence?
They are very capable. I speak with a lot of police officers on a daily basis. I see the zeal, I see the motivation in them. Unfortunately, we have consistently, consciously pushed so much politics into the work of the police service, and it's making their work difficult, I must indicate. When someone does the wrong thing, is arrested, the first person to call is an honorable. These are my boys, let them off the hook. And if you don't, then you enter their bad books, and the next minute they are transferring you left, right, center. These are legitimate issues we really need to take a look at. The police service especially, a lot of them have lost their sense of principle. They do things without recourse to their personal conviction based on what they think is right or wrong, or based on the Police Service Act 351, but rather with recourse to the politicians. Because if you don't do what they ask you to do, they would come after you. And that is a major cause of concern, because the inconsistent application or enforcement of the law is a recipe for disaster. Because if someone from part A does the wrong thing, nobody does anything, the person is not held to account, and another person from party B does it and is invited by the BNI, Martin, that is where you have their supporters amassing at the BNI headquarters or the CID headquarters. It's not by accident. We have conducted research and we've come to that realization. It's as a result of the inconsistent application of the law. And it is all feeding into that cycle of impunity,
and
which
finally,
we, as a matter of fact, need to nip in the bud.
Finally, before you take leave of us, and succinctly, if you can help me out, what should the police do? Is it that their hands are tied? What can they do?
They need to be professional. As simple as possible. I mean, as simple as that. Just be professional.
But you just said that in being professional, there is a possibility of transferring to probably places they may not want to, or their role could be, affected if they want to go by the rule, by the law. How can we deal with this? Is it that we should, I don't know, you are the security analyst, help the police out.
If you are professional, you wouldn't fear transfer. You would do things, like I indicated, based on even your personal conviction on what you think is right or wrong. You have a mandate. You have a Police Service Act. You know what your work is. Okay? You have to act in a professional manner that is consistent with the rule of law, and that is aimed at protecting the sanctity of the state. But when you start doing things with recourse to politics, you cede to that political interference. That day you cease to be a professional.
Right.
Okay. So if you imbibe into yourself that sense of patriotism, that sense of principle, I know it is difficult, because this is not the first time I'm saying this. The last time I said it, a police officer called me, if I'm transferred or if I'm fired, would you feed me? But you see, that mentality is what is motivating the politicians to keep interfering in the work of the police, and it's not helping.
It's not helping. Thank you so much, Adib Saani. Clearly, that's a concern that many of us have also heard from you that watching us today. But thank you very much. Adib Saani is a security analyst. Going into the elections, we'll be happy to hear from you as well. What do you think? What can the police do? How can you and I, as citizens, help the police in executing their mandate of protecting all and sundry and stop pandering to the whims and caprices of political parties and governments? Let us know on our various social media platforms. We'll be happy to read and share your thoughts as well. But that's how we bring the bulletin to a close. Thank you very much for watching. I am Martin Asedu-Date. Visit 3news.com. You'll find some more stories there. You have a good evening as always. Stay positive.
The race to the presidency and 8th Parliament will be tough.
24 and beyond is a movement, and it is stronger than apartheid.
There will be a boot-for-boot policing and vigilance of the poll.
But it will get very expensive.